We are back here on Healthy Living. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to interview my new friend, Dr. Jonathan Kelemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's always interesting for me to talk about what you do. You do a combination of a lot of things. And today I wanted to talk, and really he led this discussion with a few things that you wanted to bring up specifically. I'd like to talk about your team. And in talking about your team and the collaborative approach that you have, I really want to talk about why staying here in the Lowcountry for what you do is so important. We've got the best. We really do.
Well, thank you. I think our team is essential to being able to give the coordinated care, meeting all the needs of a person, many of which can go overlooked if they just interact with the surgeon or me in this case. But we have Micah in the clinic available to talk every day, Tim and Jennifer as our PAs who are working with me every day. And so it just allows us to coordinate with the inpatient nursing and not just nursing really, but the hospital administrative staff is always available so that we can solve a problem in minutes, which might otherwise take months. One
of the things I remember talking to you and your staff about is you all actually have mastered the art of communication, where there's a lot of checks and balances about the communication. You're always in touch with each other.
Exactly.
Why is that important?
Well, I think it allows us to have overlapping responsibilities so that nothing slips through the cracks, so that we take care of everything and that each person augments the other person's ability so that the final product is better.
How does a physician, I don't know how to say this, pitch themselves? I mean, you really do have the pros here. The approaches that you do are interesting too. We were talking about one approach that you do that is especially interesting and not a lot of physicians do, and the research supports the fact that it's really effective.
Exactly. So I think we have a lot of data in heart surgery to monitor our outcomes. And now the short-term outcomes at most heart centers across the country are very good.
Okay.
There's a slight variation, a few tenths of a percent one way or the other in our short-term outcomes. But long-term outcomes, returning to your regular life, are what we really care about. That's what the person wants the most. And there are some big differentiators in that. And what we use for the bypass grafts is one of the most important determinants of long-term outcomes.
Talk to me about what a bypass graft is and where it's used before we move forward.
Sure. So coronary artery disease is blockage in the coronary arteries that supply the heart. So the operation to fix that is called coronary artery bypass grafting, is basically a fancy plumbing operation.
Okay.
We take some arteries from the inside of the chest, some veins from the legs through endoscopic incision, and we sew those onto the coronary arteries past the point of blockage, essentially laying some new pipe. That'll bring blood to the heart past the point of blockage. That'll make you feel better, preserve your heart function, and help you live longer. And that's the keys to the operation.
So what do you do that's a specialized version of that?
So not all pipe is created equal, so to speak.
There you go. Exactly. No, that makes sense. That's right.
So the internal mammary artery stays open a lot longer than the vein grafts.
Okay.
And so we realized that 30 years ago in the United States, and that's been incorporated into everybody's standard operation. But what we've also learned is that using a second internal mammary artery dramatically increases long-term survival, perhaps 10 to 20%. And very few surgeons do that.
Why, may I ask?
Well, I think it's a more complicated operation.
Okay.
So it's more difficult to master. It takes longer.
All right.
And so it hasn't been widely adopted. So nationally, only about 5% of surgeons do it. And in the Lowcountry, probably less than 3%.
Oh, wow.
And so we do it in about 65% of cases.
Do you really?
Which is as high as it gets almost anywhere in the United States or the world.
But it gives you the opportunity for quality of life, which brings us kind of to the next discussion. It's really interesting. You've put together a lot of sayings that you're sort of building your practice around, which is really impressive. And the one about quality of life, I'm going to adopt for myself too, because it makes a lot of sense. Share with us what that is.
Sure. I like to tell people that when health gets better, life gets better.
And I think it's simple, isn't it?
It's very simple, and the longer I've practiced, the more it's become obvious to me.
So when you do, let's take that saying or that little anecdote right there and build on that as far as how a person's life is affected by what you do. You've performed a surgery.
Yes, so in general, by the time you need heart surgery, you're in a pretty difficult situation.
You don't feel good.
You don't feel good, and you're usually at risk of major heart attack, resulting in disability or death in the short term.
So for me, it seems like I would, if I had the surgery, I would be apprehensive. I would be a little leery of going back to a healthy lifestyle. How do you encourage people to do that?
Well, I think they want to do it. They're a little bit nervous at first,
Sure.
but you just start putting one foot after the other, and soon they're doing it. And one of the interesting things about living on a small island is I get to see a lot of my patients. And a fellow in his 80s who I operated on about 6 months ago, I had the opportunity to play golf with, and he walked 18 holes.
Did he really?
And that's pretty impressive.
That's called a testimonial.
Yeah.
It's got to be rewarding for you. I think you and I have talked about it before. My son's a physician too, and it really is about serving your patient. And is that something that drew you to medicine in the beginning?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's interesting. That's what brings you into medicine, sort of the bigger global things like that. And then you start medical school and you get caught up in the nitty-gritty. And somewhere along the line of your practice, you start to get back to the things that brought you there, because you've now sort of mastered all the technical aspects. And I think that's where I am in my career right now. It's just very rewarding to see the impact I can have on people's lives.
Is one of the gifts of your profession specifically that you have and develop relationships with your patients? I mean, you've really taken them from feeling yucky into improving their quality of life.
I think that's key. The first part is establishing trust, because a person's in a very difficult situation.
What's scary?
Yeah, they just had a heart attack, perhaps. And so getting through those first few steps, you need to establish a rapport, some personal contact, and trust, so that not just the patient, but their family and friends can all confidently move to that next step. And once we get through the operation, then returning to their preoperative or pre-problem life
is pretty important.
Yeah.
So do you encourage, one of the things since I've been interviewing physicians as long as I have now that is really fun for me and really interesting is we talk about procedure. We talk about putting the pipes back together in a newer and greater way. But then it seems to be, and I've heard your staff talk about this too, about lifestyle changes and modifications. What do you recommend as far as fueling your body in a healthy way, exercise, sleep? Are there things from a lifestyle point of view that can really impact maintaining our health?
Absolutely. So oftentimes there's a lot of small changes that can lead to a big improvement, and I think that's the key. For people who smoke, that's the biggest step, is stopping smoking. But a lot of times just some slight modifications in diet, exercise, making sure you sleep well, all of those things, getting proper balance.
Well, again, this is Dr. Kelemen speaking today, and we're talking about cardiothoracic surgery. What I really hear is good health. You walk your 18 holes. You've got a patient who's walking alongside of you. I would say that's pretty impressive. Thank you for joining us. Stay with us. There's more to come.